The home of the common Joe and the common Sally in the know, even more so than all those media talking heads. And they're free falling. That's what the ACC is doing. They're free falling away. It looks like today that Clemson has weighed in. Clemson, the other big domino to me in the ACC that could cause some real tremors. The dominoes look like they're about to start falling. I didn't think they'd start falling or teetering like this soon, but Athletic Director Graham Neff of Clemson has come out right after Florida State fired their shot, and now Clemson's fired their shot. Rumor has it there's 2 or 3 other teams that might be firing shots as well. Let's talk about it. Woo! Here we come, right on in. Once again, Outlaw Posse is in effect. That's the OCF, that's the Outlaw College Football. That's JPC, that stands for Jesse. Paul Clark on Facebook, spelled J-E-S-S-C without the I. Also on Twitter at OCF Productions. And today's song of the day is Free Fallin' by Tom Petty. Nothing like a little Tom Petty to get you in a good mood, is it not? And back in the day, I was more of a headbanger's ball kind of guy. But as I got a little bit older, I started to discover some of the mellower music like Tom Petty and whatnot, man. That's just some great stuff, man. That American Girl song from Fast Times at Ridgemont High, epic Phoebe Cates scenes that I'll never forget. And I'm sure most of you won't either that have seen that scene, especially the unrated version. Now let's get to the unrated version of the OCF. And today we're going to talk about the fact that Clemson has come out and fired a shot now. I'm going to throw a few graphs here and there just to show y'all. I have links on this stuff because you have people coming here all the time that start crying and whining and wetting their diapers and saying, that's not true. Okay, here's the links. But anyway, seems like Graham Neff has said that, he thinks that Florida State is correct in their assessment in the ACC and ESPN and their dealings and how they set this deal up to 2036. A lot of people say this is an ironclad deal. You can't get out of it. I've seen people come on here rambling on with all this lingo and legal speak. But from what I'm gathering, this is not as ironclad as you think. First of all, there's a $120 million buyout. That's a pretty good bit of change. But it can be came up with in certain scenarios. And if Clemson is now coming into the house and saying the same things, then we might have some issues. And now we're hearing rumblings also from North Carolina and the University of Miami. So if those 4 get together, it's going to be a hell of a domino effect, a much more bigger domino effect than Texas and Oklahoma or USC and UCLA. Because at that point, what you might have is an entire conference going by the wayside, just like the Pac-12 is going to eventually, if things don't change. But let's get to what old Graham Neff, the athletic director of Clemson, said. Got some notes here for y'all. Clemson AD Graham Neff echoed the statements by FSU AD Michael Alford, saying the current media rights deal will cripple the ACC's ability, specifically even Clemson and Florida State's ability to compete with other conferences and other programs like the SEC and the Big Ten. He said wholesale changes need to be had or else. Revenue distribution needs to be reviewed urgently, he said, and he would take a leadership role in that. And what that tells me is Graham Neff is telling the rest of the ACC that, hey, we got Florida State's back in this, and if things don't change, if we don't start getting more money that's comparable to some of the other major blue bloods out there that won national titles. Now, these 2 teams are not teams that have not won national championships here recently. As you know, USC and UCLA USC ain't won a national championship since the turn of the century. UCLA's never won a national championship in football that I'm aware of, unless it's one back, I think, in the 1950s that they were recognized. Maybe the UPI poll back then, aka the coaches poll. But these two programs are current money. And people forget Florida State just won a national championship back in 2013, man. It ain't been more than a decade quite yet. Clemson's already won 2 in the past 5 to 6 years. So these are pretty current national winning type programs. So the ripple effect's going to be felt big time. And Clemson coming out and saying what they're saying, backing up Florida State, is going to have other programs thinking as well. Now, Miami's a traditional power too back in the day. They won 5 national championships. So it ain't like you got chopped liver programs here talking about, hey, something needs to be changed. I mean, I know they say uneven distribution of the wealth in a conference never works, and I've never really been a proponent of it either, because if you join a conference, that means you join a conference to share the money. And now you all of a sudden want to change your mind. So I could see the beef that the rest of the conference would have for Florida State and Clemson. Maybe even Miami to some degree. Miami hasn't really came out and said anything yet, but I have a feeling that Miami is going to be the next shoe to drop, then North Carolina. So, looking on down here at the notes, says that the ACC could possibly merge with the Pac-12. If the Pac-12 went out and added SMU and San Diego State, they'd be back as the Pac-12 and save both conferences and make it to where they could renegotiate the deal somehow. And I'm not sure of the legal lingo on that, but this is what they're saying, that if they merged, that it would somehow allow them to possibly renegotiate with ESPN for a better deal. They could merge as one conference and be a mega conference themselves and be nationwide, just like the Big 12 and the Big 10's doing, and become something like the APAC. That's what the acronym they came up with in this article. That would be the Atlantic Pacific Athletic Conference, which sounds pretty cool. But the thing is, would ESPN be on board with that? Would ESPN renegotiate the deal? Would they come in good faith? And that's another thing that I keep hearing being thrown about as far as legal terms goes, is that Florida State and Clemson may draw on to something in the legal terms called good faith as far as the contract was and how it was negotiated with their former commissioner, Swofford. I don't know what their legal recourse is there, but it's just what I'm hearing. And if that's the case, if there's some kind of little legal loophole, then they may not even have to pay the $120 million, and they may get out cheaper. I'm hearing like something like $72 million. And people are like, well, how are they going to come up with that kind of money? That's still a lot of money. But the thing is, ESPN's benefiting regardless. They already got the SEC, so why wouldn't ESPN be all right with maybe renegotiating this deal and possibly merging the SEC with the ACC somewhat before the Pac-12 comes in and does that, or possibly even the Big Ten, who's with Fox Network. I mean, you want to try to curb that shit if you're ESPN. So if I'm ESPN, I'm probably like, you know what? We're going to take about 6 teams from the ACC, maybe 8, and put them in the SEC. Now, when you get down to the 7th or 8th team, you're probably going to have teams, people going to be like, I don't know if they're worthy of the SEC. But, I mean, at that point, it'd be good enough. I mean, especially with the kind of money that would bring in for the SEC and ESPN if they had a 24-team league consisting of SEC and former ACC members, in my opinion. I mean, what do you guys and gals think about all this? Do you think that there's other scenarios out there? I mean, if 8 teams from the SEC were to be integrated, or the ACC, if 8 teams from the ACC were to be integrated into the SEC, what do you think? Do you think that ESPN would be down for that? I think they would. I think the Big Ten, at that point, would come in, swoop in, and take whatever they could get out of the deal as well. There'd probably be teams like Boston College, Syracuse, possibly Georgia Tech still left, maybe Duke, NC State. But just saying, man, these 2 cats firing their shots now reminds me a lot of the whole Texas-Oklahoma stuff that when the shit hit the fan a few years back and nobody really thought it was coming. Everybody sees this one coming. So The ACC better get on the ball and do something, or they're going to be ass out, and they're going to be like the Pac-12, and they're going to be struggling to find themselves in a monetary situation that's very profitable for their athletic programs. So I really think in the end that what they should do, they want to save themselves, is merge with the Pac-12. But see, sometimes the Pac-12 is hard-headed as hell, man. They went down in flames trusting Kevin Moore in the Big Ten and got their two biggest markets scooped away from them because they trusted the wrong people and because they're just too damn hard-headed to listen. Now, the ACC has some academic institutions and stuff that sort of gel with what Pac-12 people like, the Stanford and Cals, that is. And I've already said they need to quit letting them two schools dictate anything. But the only way to save this for the ACC, the only way I see for them to save this and not have Florida State and Clemson leave in about 4 or 5 years is if they go in there and they merge with the Pac-12. And that's all I got to say about that. You guys and gals, tell me what you think about all this. Drop it in the comment section. Also, there's a heart down here. It says thanks. If you don't mind, hit that. Throw me a few dollars in the coffers. And as always, KMCA to all the other teams. Class is now officially dismissed.